The scanner made a sound that Nathan Cole had never heard before. It was a sharp beep, fast and urgent, cutting through the quiet hum of the ship. He leaned forward in his seat and looked at the screen. Something was out there in the darkness, drifting slowly through the asteroid belt. Nathan had been a salvage operator for 12 years. He had seen many things floating in the black emptiness of space. Old satellites, broken cargo containers. Once, he had even found a ship full of frozen flowers meant for a wedding that never happened. But this was different. The shape on his screen was too big, too strange, and too old. He called out to his crew. Maya Torres came up from the lower deck, wiping grease from her hands. She was his co-pilot and had been flying with him for 6 years. Behind her came Sam Briggs, a young man with messy hair and tired eyes. Sam was their engineer, and he could fix almost anything. Nathan pointed at the screen. Maya leaned in close and let out a low whistle. Sam just stared with his mouth open. The object was a ship, but it was not like any ship they had ever seen. It was covered in ice and frost. Its shape was long and curved, like something alive rather than something built. There were no markings they could read, no lights, no signs of power. It looked dead, but the scanner said otherwise. Deep inside the ship, something was still working. A faint pulse of energy, weak but steady, like a heartbeat. Nathan made a decision. He would go inside. Maya tried to stop him. She reminded him of the rules. Unknown ships could be dangerous. They could carry disease or poison or traps. The smart thing to do was to report it and move on. Let someone else take the risk. Nathan listened to her words. He knew she was right, but he could not shake the feeling in his gut. Something was in there, something that needed help. He told Maya to bring the Starbound closer. She shook her head but did as he asked. She always did. That was why they worked so well together. The Starbound was not a pretty ship. It was old and patched in a dozen places. The paint had faded years ago, and the engines made a rattling sound when they pushed too hard. But it was home. Nathan had bought it with every credit he had saved, and he had never regretted the choice. They docked with the alien vessel carefully. Sam used a cutting torch to make an opening in the hull. The metal was thick and strange, darker than anything Nathan had seen before. When the torch finally broke through, a rush of cold air came out. It smelled old, like dust and forgotten places. Nathan went in first. He wore his suit and carried a light. The beam cut through the darkness, showing walls covered in strange writing. The symbols were sharp and angular, nothing like any language in the Galactic Registry. He ran his gloved hand along the wall and felt the cold even through the thick material. Maya and Sam followed behind him. They moved slowly, checking every corner. The ship was silent except for the sound of their breathing. It felt like walking through a grave. They passed through many rooms. Some were empty. Others held machines they did not understand. One room had a window that looked out at the stars, the glass cracked but still holding. Nathan wondered who had stood there long ago, looking at the same view. Then they found the core of the ship. It was a large room, round and tall. In the center stood a cylinder made of something that looked like glass, but was not glass. It was cloudy with frost, but Nathan could see a shape inside. A figure. A person. He stepped closer and wiped the frost away with his hand. She was beautiful. Her skin was pale blue, smooth and soft-looking. Her hair was white, flowing around her face like she was floating in water. Her features were sharp but gentle, with high cheekbones and a small mouth. Her eyes were closed. For a moment, Nathan thought she was dead. But then he saw it. A faint glow around the base of the cylinder, pulsing slowly. A machine keeping her alive. Barely. Sam came forward and looked at the control panel beside the cylinder. Numbers were counting down in a language none of them could read. But the meaning was clear. Power was failing. Time was running out. Maya stood back, her arms crossed. She asked what they were going to do. Her voice was calm, but Nathan could hear the worry underneath. He looked at the woman in the glass prison. He did not know who she was. He did not know her name or her people, or why someone had locked her away and left her to drift alone in the cold emptiness of space. But he knew one thing for certain. No one deserved to die like this. Alone, forgotten, trapped. He turned to his crew and spoke in a steady voice. They were going to get her out. Sam started talking about the problems. The technology was alien. They did not know how the stasis system worked. If they made a mistake, they could kill her. Maya added more concerns. They did not know if she was dangerous. They did not know if her people would come looking for her. They did not know anything. Nathan listened to all of it. Then he spoke again. He said that sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks. He said that if they flew away and left her to die, they would have to live with that choice forever. He asked them if they could do that. If they could sleep at night knowing they had abandoned someone who needed help. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Sam sighed and started examining the control panel more closely. They worked together as a team. Sam tried to understand the alien systems, while Maya ran scans to learn about the woman's body. Nathan stayed by the cylinder, keeping watch. He talked to her even though she could not hear him. He told her to hold on. He told her that help had arrived. Hours passed. The cold seeped into their suits. Their supplies were running low, but none of them suggested leaving. Finally, Sam found something. A pattern in the controls. A sequence that might work. Nathan placed his hand on the glass. He could feel the cold even through his glove. He made a silent promise to the woman inside. He was going to save her. No matter what it took, the countdown continued. The light around the cylinder grew weaker. But for the first time since they had entered the ship, Nathan Cole felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Sam Briggs did not sleep for 2 days. He sat in front of the alien control panel with wires and tools spread around him. His eyes were red and tired, but his hands were steady. Every few hours, Maya brought him coffee and food. He ate without looking, his mind focused on the puzzle before him. The stasis chamber was dying. The light around its base grew dimmer with each passing hour. Inside, the woman floated in frozen sleep, unaware that her life depended on a young human engineer who had never seen alien technology before. Nathan stayed close. He watched Sam work and tried to help where he could. Mostly, he stood by the glass cylinder and kept his promise. He talked to her. He told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests he had seen in pictures as a child. He told her about his ship and his crew. He told her that she was not alone anymore. On the second night, Sam let out a shout. He had found the release sequence. Maya ran the final checks. She had spent hours studying the woman's body through the cloudy glass. Her biology was different from humans in many ways. Her blood was a darker shade. Her heart was in a different place. But the basics were the same. She breathed oxygen. She needed warmth. She could survive outside the chamber if they were careful. Nathan took his position beside the cylinder. He would catch her when the seal broke. Sam counted down. 3, 2, 1. The glass made a hissing sound. Frost fell away in clouds. The cylinder opened slowly, like a flower blooming in reverse. Cold air rushed out, making Nathan gasp. The woman fell forward. Nathan caught her in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body thin and fragile. Her skin was cold to the touch, but he could feel warmth returning already. Her eyes opened. Nathan had never seen eyes like hers. They were silver, bright and shining like liquid metal. They held confusion and fear and something else. Something deep and old and sad. She spoke. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. The words sounded like music, like wind chimes ringing in a storm. Nathan did not understand the language, but he understood the tone. She was asking where she was. She was asking what had happened. He held her gently and spoke in a soft voice. He told her she was safe. He told her everything was going to be okay. She did not understand his words either, but she seemed to understand his meaning. The fear in her silver eyes faded a little. She let him hold her. Maya wrapped a thermal blanket around the woman. Sam brought water. They moved her slowly to the Starbound, away from the dead alien ship and its cold, empty corridors. The next few days were strange and wonderful. The woman's name was Valera. They learned this through pictures and gestures and a lot of patience. Sam built a simple translation device, using parts from the ship and data from the alien vessel. It was rough and made many mistakes, but it was enough to share basic ideas. Valera was a princess. Her people were called the Scytherans, and they had ruled 1,000 worlds when humans were still living in caves. Their empire stretched across the galaxy, powerful and feared. Other species bowed before them or were destroyed. But Valera had been different. She told them her story slowly, with many pauses and much sadness. Her people had found a small world, rich in resources. A lesser species lived there, simple beings who had just learned to build cities. The Scytheran Council decided to take the world. The lesser species would be removed. That was the polite word they used, removed. Valera had spoken against the decision. She had stood before the council and argued for mercy. She had said that power did not give them the right to destroy. She had asked them to find another way. Her words had been her crime. The Scytherans believed that mercy was weakness. Compassion was a flaw. A princess who showed such weakness was a danger to the empire. She might spread her ideas to others. She might make the Scytherans soft-dot, so they punished her in the cruelest way they could imagine. They did not kill her. Death would have been too quick, too kind. Instead, they sealed her in the glass chamber and cast her into the void. She would drift forever, alive but trapped, aware but helpless. A warning to anyone who might think as she did. They expected her to die alone in the darkness between stars. They expected her to be forgotten. They had not expected humans. Nathan listened to her story with a heavy heart. He could not imagine such cruelty. To punish someone for asking for kindness. To throw away a life because it showed too much love. He looked at Valera and saw the pain in her silver eyes. She had been floating in that cold prison for centuries. She had lost everything. Her home, her family, her people. All because she had dared to care about strangers. He made her another promise. He would not let them hurt her again. Valera did not understand all of his words, but she seemed to feel their meaning. For the first time since her awakening, she smiled. It was a small smile, fragile and unsure, but it was real. Maya taught Valera about human food. The princess was amazed by the simple meals they ate. She had never tasted coffee before and made a face at the bitter flavor. Sam showed her how the ship worked and laughed. When she pressed the wrong button and turned off the lights. In those quiet days, something grew between them. Not just between Nathan and Valera, but between all of them. They became a family of sorts. 4 people from different worlds, sharing a small ship in the vast emptiness of space. Nathan found himself watching Valera often. The way she moved, graceful even in the cramped corridors. The way her silver eyes lit up when she learned a new word. The way she hummed softly when she thought no one was listening. A melody from a home she would never see again. He told himself it was just concern. She was a guest, a person he had saved. Nothing more, but deep inside, he knew it was more than that. Much more. One night, Valera found him sitting alone in the cockpit. The stars spread out before them, endless and cold. She sat beside him without speaking. After a long silence, She used the translation device to form a question. She asked why he had saved her. She asked why he had risked his life and his ship for a stranger. Nathan thought about the question for a long time. Then he gave her the only answer that made sense. He told her that where he came from, people helped each other. It was not a rule or a law. It was just what they did. When someone was in trouble, you reached out your hand. When someone was hurting, you tried to ease their pain. It was simple. It was human. Valara was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft and filled with wonder. She said that her people had traveled the stars for 1,000,000 years. They had conquered worlds and built empires. They had technology that humans could not imagine, but they had never learned what Nathan Cole knew in his heart. They had never learned to be kind. She leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her silver eyes. Outside the window, the stars continued their endless dance, and for the first time in centuries, Valara felt something she had forgotten was possible. She felt safe. The alarm woke Nathan from a deep sleep. He jumped out of his bunk and ran to the cockpit, his heart pounding in his chest. Maya was already there, her face pale in the light of the screens. Something had appeared on their sensors. Something big. Nathan looked at the readings and felt his stomach drop. The ship behind them was massive. It was 100 times larger than the Starbound, shaped like a blade cutting through the darkness. Its hull was black and covered with weapons. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. The Scytherans had found them. Sam came running up the stairs with Valara close behind. When she saw the image on the screen, she stopped. Her silver eyes went wide with fear. Her hands began to shake. She knew that ship. She knew what it meant. A voice came through the communication system. It was cold and sharp, speaking in the Scytheran language. The translation device struggled to keep up, but the meaning was clear enough. They were demanding the return of the prisoner. They were giving the Starbound 1 hour to comply. If the humans refused, they would be destroyed. Nathan stood very still. He could feel the fear in the room, heavy and thick. Maya was gripping the edge of her console. Sam was breathing fast. Valara had tears running down her blue cheeks. He looked at his crew. He looked at Valara. Then he looked at the massive warship on the screen. He opened a channel and spoke. 3 words. Come and take her. Then he cut the connection. Maya stared at him like he had lost his mind. She reminded him of what they were facing. A warship built for conquest. Weapons that could crack moons apart. A crew of warriors who had never known defeat. And what did they have? A salvage ship held together with patches and prayers. No weapons worth mentioning. No shields. No backup. Nathan knew all of this. He did not care. He told Maya to find them a way out. She was the best pilot he had ever known. If anyone could fly them through impossible odds, it was her. Maya wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes. But she swallowed her words and turned to her console. Her fingers began to fly across the controls. Sam went to work on the engines. He pushed them harder than they had ever been pushed before. The Starbound groaned and shook, but it held together. It always did. Valara stood frozen in place. Nathan went to her and took her hands. They were cold and trembling. He told her to trust them. He told her they would not let the Scytherans take her back. He made it a promise. She looked into his eyes. She saw no doubt there, no hesitation. Only determination. She nodded slowly. Then she straightened her back and lifted her chin. If these humans were willing to fight for her, she would not show them weakness. Maya found their escape route. A nebula, dense and swirling with energy. It would blind the Scytheran sensors. They could hide inside and lose their pursuers. But the nebula was far away. They would have to fly fast and hope the warship did not catch them first. Nathan took the pilot seat beside Maya. Together, They pushed the Starbound to its limits. The chase began. The Scytheran warship was faster than them. It closed the distance slowly but steadily. Morning shots flew past the Starbound, bright bursts of energy that lit up the darkness. Each one was a message. Stop running. Give up. Nathan did not stop. He flew into asteroid fields and threaded through gaps that should have been too small. He used every trick he had learned in 12 years of salvage work. The Starbound danced and dodged, always moving, never giving the enemy a clean shot. Sam worked miracles in the engine room. He rerouted power from everything they did not need. Lights went dark. Heat systems shut down. Every bit of energy went to the engines and the shields. He also had another idea. He rigged the reactor to send out false signals. Ghost images appeared on the Scytheran screens, dozens of phantom ships spreading out in all directions. It would not fool them for long, but it might buy a few precious minutes. Valera helped where she could. She knew Scytheran technology better than anyone. She guided Sam through the systems, showing him weak points and hidden features. Together, they found ways to squeeze more speed from the old ship. Maya flew like Nathan had never seen her fly before. She seemed to know where every asteroid was, where every gap would open. The Starbound moved like a living thing, fast and fluid. The warship fired again and again. Some shots came close. One grazed the hull and sent sparks flying through the corridor. But none of them hit true. The nebula grew larger on the screens. They were almost there. Then the Scytheran commander made a mistake. He grew impatient. He pushed his ship too hard, trying to cut them off before they reached safety. A massive asteroid loomed ahead. Maya saw it before the enemy did. She pulled the Starbound into a sharp turn, sliding around the rock with inches to spare. The warship tried to follow, but it was too big, too fast. It had to slow down or crash. Those few seconds were all they needed. The Starbound plunged into the nebula. Purple and blue clouds swallowed them whole. The sensors went crazy with static. They could not see anything outside the windows. But that meant the Scytherans could not see them. Either. Nathan cut the engines. The ship drifted in silence, hidden in the swirling colors. For a long moment, no one spoke. They listened to the static on the radio, waiting for the warship to find them. Waiting for death to come. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. The Scytherans searched the edge of the nebula, but they did not enter. Their sensors were useless inside. Their weapons could not lock onto a target they could not see. Finally, after what felt like hours, the warship turned away. It would wait for them to come out. It would call for reinforcements. But for now, the chase was over. Nathan let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Maya laughed, a wild sound of relief and disbelief. Sam collapsed against the wall and closed his eyes. Valera walked to Nathan slowly. Her silver eyes were bright with tears again. But these were different. These were tears of wonder. She asked him why. Why did he risk everything? Why did his crew follow him into certain death? Nathan thought about the question. Then he gave her the simple truth. He told her that humans were stubborn. They did not like being told what to do. When someone powerful said give up, they said no. When someone cruel said surrender, they fought harder. He told her that where he came from, people did not abandon each other. Not for comfort. Not for safety. Not ever. Valera shook her head slowly. Her people had never understood such things. They had conquered the galaxy. But they had never learned what these simple humans knew in their bones. They had never learned to fight for something greater than themselves. She took Nathan's hand and held it tight. Outside the windows, the nebula swirled in beautiful colors. Inside the ship, 4 people sat together in silence. They had won the first battle. But they all knew the war was just beginning. The Scytherans would not give up. They would return with more ships, more weapons, more fury. But Nathan Cole was not afraid. He had his ship. He had his crew. He had a woman worth fighting for, and he was human. That meant he would never stop fighting, not ever. The nebula could not hide them forever. Nathan knew this. The Scytherans were patient. They had waited centuries for Valera to die. They could wait a few more days for the humans to run out of food and air. But something strange happened while they drifted in the colorful clouds. The radio picked up signals from outside, chatter from other ships, news spreading across the sector like fire. Everyone was talking about what Nathan Cole had done. A salvage operator had defied the Scytheran Empire. A tiny ship had run from the most powerful warship in the galaxy. And somehow, against all odds, they had escaped. The story grew with each telling. Some said Nathan had destroyed the warship with a secret weapon. Others claimed he had tricked the Scytherans with clever words. A few even said he had made a deal with dark forces from beyond known space. None of it was true. But the truth did not matter. What mattered was the idea. A human had stood up to the Empire and survived. Nathan listened to the radio chatter with mixed feelings. He did not want to be famous. He just wanted to keep Valera safe. But fame had found him anyway. Then the Scytheran response came. It was broadcast across every channel, in every language. The message was simple and cold. The human known as Nathan Cole was a criminal. He had stolen property belonging to the Scytheran Empire. Anyone who helped him would share his punishment. The punishment was death. For Nathan, for his crew, for anyone who offered them shelter or aid, the Empire was mobilizing. More warships were on their way. Soon the nebula would be surrounded. There would be no escape. Nathan gathered his crew in the common room. Valera sat with them, her silver eyes dark with guilt. She blamed herself. If she had not been on board, they would all be safe. Nathan told her to stop thinking that way. They had made their choice. They did not regret it. Maya spoke up. She said they needed a plan. They could not fight the Empire alone. They could not run forever. Sooner or later, the Scytherans would catch them. Sam suggested hiding, finding some dark corner of the galaxy where no one would look, living quietly until the Empire forgot about them. But Nathan knew that would not work. The Scytherans never forgot. They never forgave. Running would only delay the end. He made a decision. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. They would send a message of their own. They would show the galaxy what humans were made of. He recorded a broadcast. His voice was calm and steady, though his hands shook slightly. He told his story. He told about finding Valera, about learning what had happened to her, about why he had chosen to save her. He told the galaxy that the Scytherans ruled through fear, but fear only worked if people let it. Then he said something that changed everything. He said he was not asking for help. He knew the danger. He would not blame anyone for staying away. But if there were others out there who believed in something greater than survival, others who remembered what it meant to stand for the right thing, they knew where to find him. He sent the message and waited. For hours, nothing happened. The radio stayed quiet. Nathan began to think no one had listened. Or worse, that they had listened and decided he was not worth the risk. Then a ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the nebula. It was a freighter, old and battered, much like the Starbound. A man's voice came through the radio. His name was Derek Shaw, and he had heard the broadcast. Derek said he was not a soldier. He was just a hauler, moving cargo from one port to another. He had a wife waiting for him back home. He had every reason to stay out of trouble, but he could not do it. He could not sit safe in his cabin while someone else fought alone for doing the right thing. He was there to help. Whatever that meant. Nathan felt something tight in his chest. He thanked Derek with words that felt too small. Then another ship arrived. And another, A mining vessel appeared, its hull scarred from years of hard work. The captain was a woman named Lily Adams. She had her whole family on board. Her husband, her 2 children, her elderly mother. They had heard the message and voted together. All of them had raised their hands to come. More ships followed. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, science vessels, even a luxury yacht crewed by a rich man who said he had lived his whole life taking and never giving, and he wanted to change that before he died. Within hours, a ragged fleet surrounded the Starbound. They were not warships. They carried no soldiers. Most of them had never fired a weapon in their lives, but they were there. Dozens of them, then hundreds. The Scytheran commander must have seen them coming. He sent another message, cold and furious. He demanded they disperse immediately. Anyone who remained would be treated as an enemy of the Empire. The human fleet did not answer with words. They answered with silence. And then, slowly, they moved into formation around the Starbound, protecting it, shielding it with their own bodies. Nathan could not believe what he was seeing. These people did not know him. They did not know Valera. They owed them nothing. Yet here they were, putting their lives on the line for strangers. Valera stood beside him at the window. Tears streamed down her blue face. In all her centuries of life, she had never seen anything like this. She asked Nathan to explain. Her people would never do this. They would calculate the odds, see that they could not win, and surrender. Why were humans so different? Nathan thought about the question. He looked out at the fleet of ordinary people who would come to stand with them. He told her that humans were not brave because they did not feel fear. They were brave because they felt the fear and did the right thing anyway. They were weak compared to many species. They lived short lives. They had no natural weapons, no special powers, but they had something the Scytherans would never understand. They had each other. When one human stood alone, others came to stand beside them. It was not strategy. It was not logic. It was just who they were. Valera listened to his words. She looked at the ships outside, at the faces she could see through the windows. Families, workers, ordinary people with ordinary lives who had chosen to risk everything. She said something soft, almost to herself. She said that her people had conquered the galaxy. They had built an empire that lasted 1,000,000 years. They had power beyond measure, but they had never had what these humans had. They had never had a reason to fight that was worth more than winning. The Scytheran fleet arrived at the edge of the system. Dozens of warships, each one capable of destroying the entire human fleet in minutes. They spread out in formation, weapons powered and ready. The final standoff had begun. Nathan opened a channel to his fleet. He thanked them for coming. He told them he would not blame any of them for leaving now. They had made their point. They had shown the galaxy what humanity stood for. No one left. The radio crackled with voices. Derek Shaw said he had never run from a fight in his life, and he was not starting now. Lily Adams said her children needed to see what courage looked like. The rich man in the yacht laughed and said this was the first time he had ever felt truly alive. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were clear and steady. He looked at Valera. He looked at his crew. He looked at the fleet of heroes who had answered his call. Then he faced the Scytheran armada and waited for whatever would come next. He was not afraid anymore. Whatever happened, he was not alone, and neither was Valera. Not ever again. The standoff lasted 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of staring at death and refusing to blink. The Scytheran fleet hung at the edge of the system like a wall of darkness. Dozens of warships, each one bristling with weapons. Each one crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. They had the power to destroy the human fleet 100 times over, but they did not attack. Nathan stood watch at the window for hours at a time. He barely slept. He barely ate. He just watched and waited, trying to understand what the Scytherans were thinking. Valera stayed close to him. She explained what she knew about her people's way of war. They were not fools. They did not fight battles they could not win easily. Every conquest was calculated. Every victory was planned down to the smallest detail. This situation was something new. Something they had not expected. The Scytherans could destroy the human fleet. That was certain. But what would happen next? The galaxy was watching. Every species, every civilization, every forgotten colony on every distant world had heard about the standoff. They were all waiting to see what would happen. If the Scytherans slaughtered hundreds of unarmed civilians for protecting one woman, the message would spread everywhere. It would show the Empire's true face. It would prove that Valera had been right all along. Mercy was not weakness. The Scytherans were the weak ones, so afraid of compassion that they would kill to silence it. Other species would see this. The Villani, the ancient scholars who had bent the knee to survive. The Kreth, the proud warriors who had been beaten into submission. The remnants of a dozen conquered civilizations who had learned to hide their anger and wait. If humans could defy the Empire, others might try the same. If one spark could start a fire, 1,000 sparks could burn the galaxy. The Scytheran commanders were not fighting a battle. They were fighting an idea. And ideas could not be killed with weapons. On the second day, intelligence reports began to arrive from the edges of Scytheran space. Other species were watching closely. Some were asking questions that had not been asked in centuries. Why did the Empire fear one woman so much? Why were they sending a fleet to crush a handful of unarmed humans? What were they so afraid of? The reports made the commanders nervous. Nathan could tell from the way their ship shifted position, moving slightly back, then forward again. They were uncertain. They were waiting for orders from higher up. On the third day, the answer came. The Scytheran flagship turned slowly. Its weapons powered down. One by one, the other warships followed. They formed a line and began to move away, back toward their own territory. They were leaving. Nathan stared at the screen for a long moment. He could not believe what he was seeing. Maya let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. Sam fell into a chair and put his head in his hands. The radio exploded with cheering from the other ships in the fleet. They had won. Not with weapons. Not with power. Just by standing together and refusing to be afraid. Valera stood very still. Her silver eyes were wide with shock. In all her centuries of life, she had never seen the Scytheran Empire retreat from anything. They had conquered worlds. They had crushed rebellions. They had wiped out entire species. But they had never faced anything like this. They had never faced people who were willing to die for something greater than themselves. She looked at Nathan. Words seemed too small for what she wanted to say. Instead, she took his hand and held it against her heart. He understood. The days that followed were busy and strange. The human fleet began to scatter, each ship returning to its own life. But before they left, they came to the Starbound one by one. Captains and crews wanted to shake Nathan's hand. They wanted to see Valera, the woman they had risked everything for. Derek Shaw brought a bottle of wine he had been saving for a special occasion. Lily Adams introduced her children, who looked at Valera with wide eyes full of wonder. The rich man from the yacht wrote a check that would keep the Starbound flying for years. Nathan accepted their thanks awkwardly. He had never been comfortable with praise. He kept saying he had not done anything special. He had just done what any decent person would do. But Valera corrected him gently. She told him that what seemed obvious to humans was extraordinary to the rest of the galaxy. Compassion was not common. Courage was not free. The choice to help a stranger, to risk everything for someone you had never met, was the rarest and most precious thing in the universe. Humans did not understand how special they were. That was part of what made them special. News of the standoff spread across the galaxy. The Scytheran Empire tried to control the story, but they could not stop it. Too many people had seen. Too many voices were talking. Other species began to reach out. The Villani sent a message of congratulation, carefully worded to avoid offending the Empire. The Kreth sent a warrior salute, a gesture they had not used in generations. Even some Scytherans, those who had always doubted the harsh ways of their rulers, began to whisper among themselves. Valera became a symbol, not just of resistance, but of hope. If a princess could survive centuries of imprisonment for showing mercy, then maybe mercy was not weakness after all. Maybe it was the strongest thing there was. Nathan did not care about symbols. He cared about the woman sitting beside him in the cockpit, watching the stars drift by. She had lost her home. She had lost her people. She had lost everything she had ever known. But she had found something new. A family. A purpose. A place where she belonged. She stayed with the crew of the Starbound. There was nowhere else she wanted to be. Years passed. The galaxy changed slowly, then quickly. The Scytheran Empire did not fall, but it began to crack. Voices that had been silent for centuries began to speak. Ideas that had been forbidden began to spread. Nathan Cole became a legend, though he never wanted to be one. People told stories about the salvage operator who had defied an empire for the sake of a stranger. Some of the stories were true. Most were not. Nathan did not bother to correct them. When reporters found him and asked why he had done it, why he had risked everything for a woman he did not know, he always gave the same answer: because she needed help. And I was there. It was not a complicated answer. It was not a profound philosophy. It was just the truth, simple and plain. And maybe that was the most human thing of all. Valera lived among humans for many years. She learned their ways, their words, their strange and beautiful customs. She shared Scytheran knowledge with anyone who asked, helping to build bridges between species that had been enemies for generations. She never forgot what the Starbound crew had done for her. She never stopped being amazed by the small acts of kindness she saw every day among humans. The way they helped strangers on the street. The way they gave without expecting anything in return. The way they fought for each other without counting the cost. Her people had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. They had built an empire on fear and strength. They had believed they were the greatest civilization in the universe. But they had been wrong. Greatness was not measured in power or conquest. It was measured in the choices people made when no one was watching. It was measured in the hand reached out to someone falling. It was measured in the voice that said "not on my watch" when everyone else stayed silent. Humans understood this in their bones. It was written in their blood, in their history, in every story they told about themselves, down in the great archives of the galaxy. Many species were remembered for many things. The Scytherans for their conquests. The Villani for their wisdom. The Kreth for their strength. But humans were remembered for something different. Something that could not be measured or counted or conquered. They were remembered as the ones who looked at a dying woman in a glass prison and said, "No, not on a watch, and that." More than anything else, made all the difference. Nathan Cole lived a long and happy life. He flew his ship among the stars until his hair turned gray and his hands grew slow. Valera stayed by his side through all of it. On the last night of his life, she sat with him in the cockpit one more time. The stars spread out before them, endless and eternal. She asked him if he had any regrets, if he would change anything about the choices he had made. He smiled and shook his head. He had saved someone who needed saving. He had stood up when others sat down. He had loved and been loved in return. What more could anyone ask for? Valera held his hand as the stars turned slowly outside the window. And when the end came, it came gently, like falling asleep after a long journey. Nathan Cole, the salvage operator who had changed the galaxy, closed his eyes for the last time. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, 1,000 lights burned a little brighter, because of what one ordinary human had done, because of what all ordinary humans could do, if they only chose to try.